Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one is going to be for episode 292. So the second last episode of Boruto Part 1 before we go into a somewhat lengthy hiatus. So we've just got 293 and then we're on break for what looks to be at least 3 to 6 months. Could be longer, who really knows. We do obviously have some episodes coming in September at the very least, in terms of like original Naruto content, but we are right now getting up to that break point. But interestingly, today is just in general a big day for Boruto. One of the most hyped ever episodes of the anime today. That definitely delivered. And then later on today, we have the new Boruto manga chapter that's going to be huge. Chapter 79 officially releasing later on today. I will have a review up later on today, so check that out later on once it goes live, because that's a big chapter. I think most people have seen the spoilers at this point. I won't spoil it here. Please don't spoil it in the comments. We will wait until that video later on to discuss it. So, huge day for Boruto on both sides of the franchise, anime and manga. But we're here to talk about the anime first. So, how did they do this? This was the one that was hyped up as being the big episode. The big animation. They're going all out with this episode. And I thought they did a very good job. That's the big thing to say here. This was a fight that, even though it's at an important point in the story, to me the choreography of this fight in the manga didn't do that much for me. The actual dramatic events in the manga, of course, were very good. And that adaptation came over very well. But what made the anime so strong in this episode was that they turned that fight by adding movement to it, their interpretation of the panels from the manga, and how they just kind of used the setting a little bit better and had the fight, part of the fight take place on top of one of the cubes was very cool. They did some really strong stuff overall. In adapting this fight, still being accurate of course to the manga, but just presenting it in a way where you much better understand what's actually happening. They didn't do the wild, super flashy animation, and I think that was probably for the best. I think this fight needed to be more of the kind of up-close taijutsu stuff. So most of the expansion of this fight was definitely the up-close stuff where they do the technical taijutsu sequences, and then we see the Rasengans coming out and Kawaki's moves. So that all helped, I think, and added together to make the eventual fight that we got to, of course, Kawaki with the kind of reawakened weapon-only karma versus Borushiki, Momoshiki in control going all out, feel super strong, building up to, of course, the huge emotional kind of series, it seems like series altering moment of Boruto's apparent death at the hands of Kawaki here. So there's so much to get into with this episode. So in terms of the adaptation, we did about 1 3/4 chapters. We did the rest of chapter 65 that we didn't cover from the last time out, and then basically just chapter 66 in full. So this made for, I think, the best end point for this episode, going into the one remaining episode, which we will discuss a little bit later on. But the fight is basically a multi-stage fight, sort of continuing on from what we got before. So Borushiki is just too strong for Code to handle. So Code has to basically hold Kawaki hostage, and we then get the arrival of Shikamaru onto the scene. Naruto arrives in Sage Mode, of course. He needs to be here to see a lot of this stuff happen. Shikamaru needs to be here because he needs to sort of begin to figure some stuff out from the fact that Code is talking right behind him. So figuring out that Code has a partner. So that's all here for kind of plot-based reasons. There's always going to be a frustration with stuff like this where they set up ooh, Naruto's arriving on the scene in his sort of improved Sage Mode, and he doesn't do anything with it. You understand that because effectively all the characters here have, karma related powers, and that's the new ability in Boruto, and that's the thing that's going to be more powerful than anything. And so with Naruto, without Kurama, his power level is diminished, but it is weird that they just really don't have him do anything. The only thing they seem to highlight here is it gives him speed to at least dodge and keep up with the characters to be able to make a save at the last minute, but it doesn't seem like he has the power to challenge anyone here, and that's the kind of point that's being made. Because you can see it, the setup is really clear here, that when Kawaki sees that Naruto has arrived on the battlefield, he's upset because he fears for Naruto's life. He has come out here to confront Code, how all this came about, because he wants to protect Naruto and prevent Naruto from dying. And he's convinced that Naruto, without the power of Kurama especially, will just die on this battlefield, and he does not want that to happen. He'll do anything to make that happen. That's becoming much more and more clear now, just with the emotions around this situation, and especially in a way how how they handle the scenes between Kawaki and Naruto is that it's not that he will follow and listen to Naruto, Naruto has full control over him, but more of just Kawaki values Naruto as a super important person to him, and Kawaki, with his own kind of free will do everything within his power to protect Naruto, even if it goes against what Naruto directly kind of says or wants. And that's kind of the important kind of takeaway from this in terms of who Kawaki ultimately is as a character, because I think if you especially anime only viewers at this point have definitely gotten into the habit of just you've grown to really like Kawaki. You've seen the growth of this character. You can see the potential there, because the family dynamic is there. He is a part of the Uzumaki family, but he is completely kind of consumed with everything is to protect Naruto. So this all, of course, builds up, of course, to the idea that, Momoshiki is here. He's the one taking over, and he is about to, just go through everyone. He's about to kill Naruto to kind of get what he wants, and this builds up to this is the moment that kind of reawakens Kawaki's karma mark as he absorbs the giant Rasengan. Now, we do have to talk about some of the choreography here, the Rasengan, of course, is a fantastic moment. Just the idea in general that Momoshiki having been defeated by Rasengans, basically, by controlling Boruto, has just become sort of the Rasengan master in a way. He just uses these abilities and adds in new abilities just because he's so knowledgeable of jutsu in general, and there's something very thematic about just him being the one to always now use Rasengans while he controls Boruto. So yeah, the Rasengan, the kind of bullet thing, was very, very cool to stop Code from taking Kawaki away. But of course, the Kawaki awakening moment is pretty huge, because this is where they revealed that Amado implanted this, back when he repaired Kawaki's arm, and a lot of the Amado is being suspicious stuff, which wasn't as crazy in the anime compared to how much they teased it in the manga, made it a little bit better. You could maybe make the argument of did they focus on it enough perhaps in the anime? But I think they did enough to where you knew Amado was up to something. The reason they kind of replayed that scene of, Amado basically calling out Kawaki's powerlessness, is it because are upset having lost the power, or what is it? What do you actually want in this situation? Basically highlighting the idea that, if your desire is strong enough, it will return. It will awaken the karma. So he did this without Kawaki's consent, basically. He gave him this power, but obviously did it in such a way where Kawaki's own will eventually would reawaken it, where he'd get to a situation where he would need this power more than anything to win the day, do what he wants, and in this case it is to protect Naruto. So this is where, of course, the episode changes, because all of a sudden now we have two very even combatants here, like full power kind of Borushiki versus Kawaki with this kind of newly as a weapon karma mark, where they basically point out he has the kind of full power set of Ishiki. So he can do the shrinking stuff, he can put stuff into the kind of the storage dimension, he can pull stuff out of it, and those two in combination with each other is obviously an incredibly powerful combination that defeated Naruto and Sasuke, of course. So Kawaki is now basically above Ishiki effectively in terms of like if we're having a little bit of a power level discussion here. And you would say that like as powerful as Momoshiki is, the reliance on just sort of, you know, speed taijutsu and then Rasengans doesn't seem like it's quite enough against the kind of uniqueness of Kawaki's power here, which is basically the way the fight ends up going, is that you can sort of tell that Momoshiki is staying in the fight with the agility more than anything. He doesn't really have the kind of firepower ultimately, or the situations to fully kind of push through and actually take out Kawaki. And so it builds up, of course, over the episode. Some incredible taijutsu sequences. There's even some nice references to probably what's like, I think, the best Naruto taijutsu sequence, the kind of Kakashi Obito stuff, where like they kind of use each other's hands a little bit to do the kind of signs for jutsu. And Kawaki's actually the one to do that. So really, really cool stuff, as you know, eventually Kawaki gets the advantage over Momoshiki, the kind of rods go in, and he falls off the cube. Naruto comes in, saves Boruto, but this is the thing where, like, at this point, Momoshiki has been weakened, so Boruto comes out, and there's a fight for control here between the two. They are both able to sort of gain control. There's a little bit of a nice subtle thing of, like, you kind of know which one's in control based on like which eye is closed and which eye is open. That's a nice little moment, but it's all set up for the big Kawaki kills Boruto scene. Going ahead with the plan, the last ditch plan that they had in place from earlier. That if he ever goes out of control and no one can deal with him, I will deal with it for you. I will kill you if I have to. Now, again, in the background of this, you also have the idea that this is kind of meant to be, in a way, Sasuke's role, but he isn't here. So he misses out on this scene. But yes, Boruto pushes Naruto away, and Kawaki just... It starts out as a punch, and as soon as he makes contact, the crazy, you know, ninja tech arm, just the tree kind of thing comes out. And it's such a brutal shot because it's just like, it makes a hole directly through Boruto. So it's a brutal, brutal, brutal injury that just is meant to be instantaneous kind of kill on the main character as well. So it's meant to be the death of Momoshiki and Boruto. This was the sacrifice that needed to be made. How are we going to feel about this? Kawaki has had to kill Boruto in front of Naruto, but this is what he feels that he has to do, because for Kawaki, he views this as being helping Naruto. But it is also for Naruto, I suppose, the reason, that the moment where he kind of realizes that, like, he doesn't, even though he knows Kawaki looks up to him, Naruto doesn't really have quote-unquote control over Kawaki, because he makes this choice on his own. And of course, because Boruto is the one to be like, do it, it does kind of change the dynamic where, like, there is an acceptance of, like, this was the only way to resolve this situation. If Kawaki didn't gain this power-up to defeat Boruto, basically, what would they have done? Otherwise, like, it would have been a bit of a kind of mess of a situation, because Momoshiki would have kind of taken over control and just had control over Boruto basically forever. So it's a pretty kind of crazy situation, and obviously it's a insane kind of cliffhanger of, like, the main character is dead. Now, because of the chapter 1, episode 1 flash forward scene where we know Boruto is alive in the future, you know Boruto survives this. Now, without spoiling too much, of course, it is actually the next chapter of the manga that like resolves this. We have one episode to go. So everything points to the fact that in the last episode of part 1, we're at the very least, I think, going to get the sort of revival of Boruto and that whole setup. I won't spoil the exact details. But I think beyond that, because they're doing more than a chapter per episode that they're animating, I wonder how specifically they're going to wrap this up. Because I think there's an okay end point, but it does require, I think, them to have a little bit of extra content. Now, there's a fight in the next chapter as well. Obviously, the two characters kind of left capable of fighting, Code, Kawaki. So I assume that will get a little bit of expansion, and hopefully that, along with some sort of a kind of end of part 1 type kind of sequence, is enough to fill out the episode. Because if we're going on break for a long time, I wonder how much will be done to properly really frame this as like the ending of a big moment. Because in the manga, it's not really a break and we come back after a long time. Like, this arc directly continues, and where we're going, like, say, in the chapter coming out later today, is a direct continuation of this sequence. Like, there's very little, like, time that gets sort of skipped over. And if there is a time that gets skipped over, it's a couple of chapters into this rather than like right now. So it's kind of slightly odd timing, but I think what they wanted to do was like, okay, we want to end it in or around the quote-unquote death of Boruto scene, but we can't just end it with that, because one, people know it gets resolved because of the chapter 1 stuff. Two, even people who maybe forget that are still going to be like, you know, it's almost too extreme of a cliffhanger. So you have to at least do what's next. Now, in my mind, like, I suppose, is the idea of the whole Momoshiki, you know, these blue eyes will take everything from you. This event is coming up soon. That's my guess for what they're going to end part 1 on, with the idea of like full circle from basically the original Boruto content of effectively, you know, like the movie content where we deal with Momoshiki, and the aftermath that got added when we kind of did the kind of manga anime kind of adaptation and not just the movie, which was the whole setup for the karma kind of stuff with Boruto and Momoshiki kind of being inside of him. That kind of coming full circle feels like the perfect way to end part 1 ultimately, of the setup of the long-term future. Those eyes will take everything from you, to it's going to happen next, basically, is a good opener for part 2. So there are my thoughts on the episode overall. So yeah, the final thing is just the teaser for next week's episode was literally just the Boruto dead on the ground shot, just lingering on that. They didn't show a single shot from the next episode. It seems to be called Farewell, which is like, it's an interesting one because it makes sense as for the series to call it that. But in terms of what the actual story content they're going to be portraying is, I'm not sure why it's necessarily called Farewell based on what actually happens. So unless they're going to do some weird setup for like, when we come back, we're going to be doing some like original arc that happens in between, but there's not really much time for that. I'm not really sure what they're going for. But I can accept if it is literally just the case of, this is the final episode of Boruto Part 1, so we're calling it Farewell. That's fine to me. So, yeah, really, really strong episode. Loved how they did the adaptation. Everything hit because, you know, this is an important scene. Going forward, getting us to the Boruto versus Kawaki Chapter 1 stuff, this is an important scene to get us there. And a lot of what happens here and the resolution that we're going to get, I suppose, in the next episode really sets the stage for some really, really impactful stuff that basically the chapter coming out later on today is going to get us to the point effectively that we've been waiting for so long. So this is a very important day for Boruto on both sides of the franchise, and yeah, just really good start here with episode 292. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on the episode. Remember, I will be doing my chapter 79 review later on, as soon as possible after the chapter comes out, which when this video goes live should be like what, 1, 2, 3, like 4 or 5 hours after this video technically goes live. I try to get those videos up as soon as possible, but it will definitely be up to date. So check that out. Keep an eye on the channel for when the chapter drops, because it's a big one. It is a huge chapter. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.